Hi everyone, welcome to Must Read Monday. My name is Dabney. I'm the young adult librarian at the Twin Lakes Library System and I use they, them pronouns. Today I'm going to be talking to you all about one of my favorite young adult authors, Holly Black. So I first started reading Holly Black books when I was in high school, so back in 2005, 2006 when I was a senior. I picked up her modern Faerie Tales trilogy. So this was the only books that were out at the time, and I just really fell in love with her writing and her characters, and so I've followed her ever since then, and I actually got to meet her in person. I think it was last year. So yeah, that was really cool getting to meet one of my literary heroes that I've been following for pretty much all of my adult life. And she's written so many books, mostly young adult books. She's also written some middle grade books and some graphic novel series. So I'm going to have a complete list in the notes for this video of like what she's written and where you can read it online. And all the books I'm going to talk to you about today, we do have in our physical library collection, so you can check those out. You can put them on hold and come get them from our drive-thru, which is open Monday through Saturday 10 to 2. And some of them are online, so I will mention that as well. But the first series I'm going to talk about is Modern Fairy Tales, and the first book is Tithe. And this series is about fairies, obviously, but it, like, fairy exists kind of like within the human world, though most humans are not aware that fairies exist. Like, they can't see them, they can't interact with them, but the main character of this book is Kay, and so one night she ends up meeting a knight from Fairy, and he's in a real bad way, and she ends up helping him and kind of helping save his life, and so he like owes her for that, and they end up in this kind of contentious relationship. The fairy knight is very proud and haughty and does not like feeling that he is beholden to this, teenage girl. But there are lots of twists and turns in this book and in this series, and a lot of things are not quite as they seem, and Kay ends up getting even deeper involved with Fairy, and, within these books, fairies, they're not like all nice and happy and pretty. Holly Black, she does a really great job of channeling like kind of classic fairy tales and folk tales within her books. So there's definitely like elements, I guess, almost of horror that, you've got like the Unseelie Court, and those are sort of the scary fairies, they're the ones that go bump in the night and do bad things to humans. And then you've got the Seelie Court, and they're supposedly like the nice ones. One thing you learn is never trust a fairy. But anyway, so like this series, I just love like the world building she has. I love all the characters, and I think this was the first book that I remember reading where there was like a queer character on the page. Kay's best friend Cornelius, and he's gay, and I remember like as a teenager that just being like really like special and like this revelation to me. And definitely YA Lit has come like a long way since then, and now we have lots of diversity in our books. But yeah, for me this is special because that was the first time I read a gay character, and yeah, so he does come up. Like all the characters are throughout the trilogy, even though each book kind of focuses more on a different character. So this one is about Kay, And then book 2 is Valiant, that's about another character, and then book 3 is Ironside, and that's about another one. But they all kind of mesh together, and yeah, I really like this series a lot. And this one is not, the series is not available online, so you would have to check it out from our collection. So the next book she wrote after that series is White Cat, and this is the first book of the Curse Workers trilogy. And if you want to, you can listen to these books on RBDigital. And this is like kind of a completely different book series, and I kind of think about this as almost like her mafia book, even though there's not quite the mafia. But in this world, some people are born curse workers, and I think it's usually something that happens like within families. And so curse workers, like, they have the ability with their touch to kind of like manipulate your emotions and your memories and your luck. And they, you know, obviously have like a bad reputation, and people are very wary of them. And in this world that Holly Black has created, like, everyone has to wear gloves, which I thought was a neat touch. So if you see somebody taking off your gloves, you know, you want to get away from them because they might be a curse worker, and they might be about to do something bad to you. And the main character in this book is Cassel, and his family are curse workers. So they're kind of like that. They're kind of like a mafia family almost. And you know, he's growing up with them, but he actually doesn't have any powers, and so that makes him kind of like the odd one of the family. And I don't want to get too much into it. There's like some like mystery elements to this, and anyways, I love the world she created. I love the characters. And it's been a while since I've actually read this trilogy, but as I was kind of like reading back through about it and kind of flipping through the pages, it made me really want to listen to the audiobooks, because I remember just being so entranced by the characters and this world they live in and the things that they go through. It's, you know, all of her books are just really well written and kind of dark and have like this dangerous element that personally I really like when I'm reading. So that is this trilogy. The next book she wrote is a standalone. So I love book series, but sometimes, you know, it's nice to read a standalone. But I would also love that if she wrote more about this. This is her vampire book. So Holly Black, she kind of does it all, and she does it very well. So The Coldest Girl in Coldtown. And again, the world building that Holly Black does is just really cool. This is not like any vampire book you're going to read, and trust me, I've read lots and lots of vampire books. But this is sort of set like in, I guess like the United States, but vampires are kind of confined to different cities, which are known as cold towns. So they've kind of like taken over and these cities, but they're also being kept in them. And, you know, humans can go into cold towns, but they cannot come out of them. Like, once you go in, you're not coming back out, because, you know, everyone is scared of, you know, being attacked by vampires, being infected by vampires. So in this book, the main character, Tana, she is at a party with her friends, and she wakes up the next day, and like everyone is dead. Like, they've been attacked by vampires during the night, and the only survivor is her ex-boyfriend, and he's actually been bitten and infected. So she, you know, has to like kind of stay away from him, because once you've been bitten, like, you start craving blood, and if you drink blood, then you're going to become like a full vampire. The other person they find in the house is a vampire, and he is chained up in one of the rooms, and so, daylight is coming, and she's having to make a decision, like, is she going to help this vampire? Like, she doesn't know who he is or what happened to him. Like, why is he chained up? Did he kill people? She doesn't know. And then while she's trying to decide what to do in this extremely traumatic circumstance, the vampires return. And so the three of them flee, and they are headed to the closest Coldtown because, they need to get her ex-boyfriend there before, he attacks somebody. And she's also trying to figure out, what to do. Like, her friends are dead, who did it, all that kind of stuff. And, once they get into Coldtown, it's amazing. It's like a really dark and kind of gritty place, but at the same time, there's sort of like the whole allure of the vampires and their very like decadent and beautiful life. And I just really enjoyed it, and I loved getting to know the characters. I love vampires, so learning more about the vampire that they encounter. His name is Gabriel, and like learning his backstory and all that was just very enjoyable. And also, I've been holding this book this whole time, and now I just kind of want to be like, look, there's my hand. Anyways, random. But yeah, I highly recommend. And this book will definitely, like, it's satisfying, but it also kind of leaves you wanting more. It's just that good. Okay, her next book is another standalone book, and this is The Darkest Part of the Forest, and this is another book about fairies. And so in this book, the main characters are Hazel and Ben, and they are brother and sister. They're growing up in this town called Fairfold, which is located next to the forest where the Fae live. And their town is kind of like a tourist attraction. People come there because, they know like the Fae live right nearby. And one of the main attractions is in the forest, and it's a glass coffin. And in the glass coffin, there is a sleeping prince. And he's, of course, extremely beautiful, and he has like these horns, and it's kind of like this local like lore or legend that maybe if somebody kisses the coffin, he might wake up. So that's kind of been a tradition that within this town, sort of going back, I don't know how long, but definitely like back when Ben and Hazel's parents were, teens, like this prince was there. And so he's kind of like this ageless, mysterious beauty, and Hazel and Ben have grown up fascinated with him, and actually as they get older, they both have a crush on him, and, they talk about like, oh, when I wake him up, or when you wake him up, and then he'll fall in love with whichever one of them and live happily ever after. Well, one day, they go to the forest, and the coffin is smashed open, and the prince is missing, and this is just the start of things going all kinds of bad in their town. And you find out as this book goes along, which I'm not going to spoil for you, that Hazel is much more deeply connected to things within fairy and with the Fae than either Ben or herself really realizes, which it's totally amazing how Holly Black has like planned this all out and written it, and I just love it so much. And again, kind of like with all of her books, I like that there's like diversity, and also, I think, yeah, Ben is gay, and I just remember like, she writes all these characters so well, and I just remember reading this and feeling like, that was so special to me. But anyways, it was so good. I love it. And this is an ebook on RBDigital. So, and then finally wrapping up with her newest trilogy. This is The Cruel Prince. It is the first book of The Folk of the Air. And this one, the first book is available on RBDigital as an ebook and an audiobook, but the rest of the trilogy is not on there. So you can, again, check these all out from the library. This is another series set in fairy, and I will say what's really cool in this book series is you've got all the characters from modern fairy tales and from the darkest part of the forest. They all a lot of them show up in this series. They kind of have cameos, and they're sort of like minor side characters. So you don't have to read those books to read these, but if you have read those, like myself, it was kind of this cool Easter egg of like, oh, hey, I remember them. This is what they're doing nowadays, and that was very satisfying. But anyways, this one is set mostly in fairy, so the main character is Jude, and when a little bit of backstory about Jude, her mom is human, and she used to live in fairy, and she was married to a fae, and they had a daughter together. And then she fell in love with a human. They went back to the human world with the daughter, and then she gets remarried and has 2 more kids, and that's Jude and Taryn. Anyways, her fae husband had thought she had died, she had faked her death, but then he realized she's alive, she took his kid, he comes to get them back, it does not go well, and yeah, he ends up killing her human parents, so that was bad, and ends up taking all the kids back to fairy. And if you're like, Dabney, why are you spoiling all this for me? That's literally in the very first chapter. But it just kind of sets it up for Jude growing up in fairy as a human. She and her sister Taryn are tormented by, the fae children who they've grown up beside, and life is really difficult for them. They're seen as lesser, almost like animals to the fae, and everyone just thinks they're never going to be good enough. They're kind of playthings, not real, whatever. And so Jude has this drive in her to prove herself to the fae, and particularly to the one person who torments them the most, which is Prince Carden. So he's the youngest prince, and they've always had I would say a bad relationship, and in this book she just kind of ends up becoming embroiled with a lot of political plots. She joins a group of spies and is learning to fight and spy and make poisons and all kinds of things, and in the meantime plotting against Carden. Lots of stuff happens in this book and in the trilogy, and it's just such a journey, and I love it so much, and I love Jude, and I think she's fierce and smart, and she does prove herself very much capable of being like a fae, and you can decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, I love it. It's brilliant, and kind of one thing I love about Holly Black books is her characters are very complex. I'm not going to say that they're morally gray, but they do things, that are kind of bad, or, they make mistakes, and I like, reading about them kind of dealing with the consequences of what they've done, and, having to make these hard choices, and, growing as characters. It's just, really fascinating, and of course her world building is great and her writing is beautiful, so I can't recommend her books enough. If you like fantasy at all, then I would say please read her books. I think you'll enjoy them. But yeah, that is all for today's episode, except I just remembered that I didn't tell you your activation code because I never remember to do this, and I wrote it down actually. Here at the 11th hour, your code for this video is Tithe. So sorry I didn't remember that earlier, but yeah, I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you later. Bye.